The Guardian's Ultimatum. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of the TDF Resilient, watching Earth's orbital defense platforms glide past like silent sentinels. The notification she'd been dreading finally flashed across her neural interface. Another demand from the Meridian Collective. "Display message," she commanded, her voice steadied despite the weight settling in her stomach. The holographic projection materialized before her, bearing the Collective's characteristic geometric watermark. The message was shorter than usual. In typical Meridian fashion, they'd grown more concise as their patience waned. "Your species has 24 solar cycles to begin the dismantling of all military installations. Non-compliance will be met with appropriate corrective measures." Sarah allowed herself a small, grim smile. The Meridians, self-proclaimed guardians of galactic peace, had never encountered a species quite like humanity. In their 10,000 years of expanding across the galaxy, they'd grown accustomed to dealing with civilizations that evolved on gentle worlds, species that developed technology before they developed true resilience. Admiral, her XO, Commander David Rivera, appeared at her side. "The Security Council is assembled." The war room of the Resilient was already crowded when Sarah arrived. Holographic projections of Earth's military and political leaders filled their designated spaces around the circular table. President Zhou's avatar occupied the primary position, her expression grave. "They've given us 24 hours, Sarah announced without preamble. Same demands as before. General Santos of the Pan-American Command leaned forward, his hologram flickering slightly. "And I assume we're still going with Operation Looking Glass." "The Meridians have never failed to subjugate a species," President Zhou reminded them. "Their technology is centuries ahead of ours, their fleet numbers in the thousands." "With respect, Madam President," Sarah interjected, "they've also never tried to subjugate a Deathworld species before. They don't understand what that means." The room fell silent. Everyone present knew humanity's history, the long climb from prey to apex predator, the countless challenges that had forged their species into something unique in the galaxy. While other species evolved in stable environments, humans had survived ice ages, predators, natural disasters, and their own destructive tendencies. It had made them different, adaptable, dangerous. The Meridians believe their technological superiority makes them invincible. Sarah continued. "They'd grown complacent. They expect us to be like the others, to bow down when they demonstrate their power, to accept their protection in exchange for our autonomy. And instead," Commander Rivera added, "we're going to show them what happens when you back a Deathworld predator into a corner." The next few hours were a flurry of activity. While the Meridians waited for humanity's surrender, Operation Looking Glass moved into its final phase. Sarah coordinated with fleet commanders across the solar system, each piece moving into position with practiced precision. The Meridians had made a fundamental mistake in their assessment of humanity. They saw Earth's harsh environment as a disadvantage. Surely a species from such a dangerous world would be primitive, barely able to achieve spaceflight. They couldn't comprehend that Earth's very hostility had been humanity's greatest teacher. 23 hours into the ultimatum, Sarah received the message she'd been waiting for. Every piece was in place. The orbital defense platforms had been evacuated, their automated systems running on minimal power. To the Meridian's advanced sensors, Earth would appear to be preparing for surrender. "Message from the Meridian flagship," Rivera reported. "They're congratulating us on our wisdom in choosing peace." Sarah checked the time. 23 hours and 40 minutes since the ultimatum. "Right on schedule. Send our response," she ordered. The message that went out was brief, carrying none of the flowery diplomatic language the Meridians were accustomed to. It contained just 3 words: correction. Choose war. Simultaneously, every seemingly dormant defense platform around Earth suddenly powered up. Their signals scrambled to appear as if they were malfunctioning. The Meridian sensors, calibrated to detect organized military responses, would see only chaos. Exactly as planned. "They're sending another message," Rivera announced, his voice tight with anticipation. They're demanding to know what's happening. Sarah watched as the first Meridian ships began to react, their formation shifting as they tried to make sense of the conflicting data. They'd expected submission. Instead, they were facing something their extensive diplomatic and military records had never prepared them for, a species that had evolved knowing that sometimes survival meant fighting even when victory seemed impossible. All ships, execute Phase 1. Sarah commanded. Let's show the collective what happens when you try to cage a Deathworld species. The battle that followed would reshape the galaxy's understanding of humanity. But more importantly, it would teach the Meridian Collective a lesson they should have learned millennia ago. Technological superiority means nothing when faced with an enemy who has spent their entire evolutionary history overcoming impossible odds. In the chaos of those first moments, as humanity's carefully planned response unfolded, Sarah thought about all the species that had surrendered to the Meridians over the millennia. They had chosen the path of least resistance, surrendering their autonomy for the promise of peace. But humanity had learned different lessons on their harsh world. They had learned that peace without freedom was just another form of extinction. They had learned that sometimes survival meant fighting even when the odds seemed insurmountable. And now, they would teach these lessons to the galaxy. Silent Storm. High Commander Zixtal of the Meridian Collective stood aboard the Eternal Wisdom, watching the holographic display with growing unease. The human defense platforms were acting erratically, their energy signatures fluctuating in patterns that defied logical analysis. According to every strategic doctrine in the Collective's vast archives, this should have been impossible. Status report, he demanded, his crystalline form reflecting the blue light of the tactical displays. Inconclusive, High Commander. His second, Valthor, responded. Their systems appear to be malfunctioning, but the patterns are inconsistent with any known form of technological failure. Zixtal felt an unfamiliar sensation. Doubt. In 10,000 years of peaceful expansion, the Collective had never encountered genuine resistance. Their technological superiority had always been enough to ensure compliance. Yet something about this situation felt wrong. Aboard the TDF Hyperion, Commander James Rodriguez watched his tactical display with predatory satisfaction. The Meridians were falling for it, their ships moving exactly as predicted. Their rigid adherence to established doctrine made them predictable, a fatal flaw when facing humanity. All units, execute Phase 2, he transmitted, his voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Remember your training. We're not fighting their way. We're fighting ours. Across the solar system, humanity's response unfolded like a deadly dance. The supposedly malfunctioning defense platforms suddenly synchronize, but not to attack. Instead, they began broadcasting a cacophony of conflicting signals, creating an electronic storm that played havoc with Meridian sensors. High Commander. Valthor's voice carried an edge of panic. We're losing sensor coherence across all frequencies. The humans. They're using our own scanning protocols against us. Zixtal watched in disbelief as his supposedly invincible fleet began to lose coordination. The humans hadn't just studied Meridian technology. They'd understood it well enough to weaponize its fundamental principles against itself. On Earth, Dr. Maya Patel monitored the operation from the Quantum Defense Initiative's underground facility. The electromagnetic chaos is working, she reported to Admiral Chen. Their quantum communication network is degrading exactly as we predicted. They're about to experience something they've never faced before: isolation. The Meridian fleet had always operated as a single, perfectly coordinated entity. Their quantum communication network allowed instantaneous information sharing across vast distances, but they'd never considered what would happen if that network was disrupted by an enemy who understood its underlying principles. Commander Rodriguez watched as the Meridian formation began to break down. Without their usual level of coordination, individual ship commanders were forced to make decisions independently, something their rigid command structure had never prepared them for. "Launch the Ghosts," he ordered. Across the solar system, hundreds of small, stealthy craft emerged from hiding places in asteroid fields and orbital debris clouds. These were humanity's answer to Meridian superiority. Not massive warships trying to match Meridian firepower, but small, agile vessels designed to exploit the gaps in their defenses. High Commander Zixtal felt his crystalline form vibrate with frustration as reports of attacks began flooding in from across his fleet. The humans weren't engaging in proper combat formations. Instead, their small ships were darting in and out of sensor shadows, striking vulnerable points and disappearing before the Meridians could respond. "This is not warfare," Val Thor protested. "They're acting like predators," Zixtal finished grimly. For the first time in his long life, he began to understand what it meant to face a species that had evolved on a death world. The humans weren't fighting to demonstrate superiority or establish dominance. They were fighting to survive, and they were using every dirty trick and tactical advantage they could find. In the Hyperion's command center, Rodriguez coordinated the assault with cold efficiency. The Ghosts struck again and again, targeting communication arrays, sensor nodes, and propulsion systems. They weren't trying to destroy the Meridian ships, just isolate them, confuse them, and demonstrate that their technological superiority wasn't the advantage they thought it was. "They're beginning to retreat," his tactical officer reported with a note of surprise. "The outer elements of their fleet are falling back to defensive positions." Rodriguez allowed himself a small smile. They're starting to realize that all their advanced technology means nothing if they can't effectively coordinate its use. Send the next message. Across the compromised Meridian communication network, a simple text transmission appeared on every ship's command console. This was a demonstration. "The next phase will not be so gentle. You have 6 hours to withdraw from Earth's orbit. After that, we stop playing nice." In the Eternal Wisdom's command center, Zixtal read the message with a growing sense of dread. In all of recorded history, no species had ever dared to issue ultimatums to the collective. Yet here were these humans, these primitives from a savage world, not only resisting but dictating terms. "High Commander," Val Thor spoke hesitantly, "our tactical analysis suggests that this attack utilized less than 30% of Earth's visible military assets, and our sensors indicate there may be significantly more we cannot detect." Zixtal stared at the tactical display, watching as his magnificent fleet struggled to reestablish proper formation. For the first time in Meridian history, they faced an enemy who didn't play by their rules, who didn't respect their superiority, and who seemed to take almost savage joy in turning their own technological advantages against them. "Send word to the Collective Council," he ordered finally. Tell them we may have gravely underestimated the humans, and request reinforcements, many reinforcements." As the message was transmitted, Zixtal couldn't shake the feeling that the collective had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed that their peaceful expansion could continue indefinitely, that their technological superiority made them invincible. But they had never faced a species forged in the crucible of a death world, a species that had evolved knowing that survival sometimes meant fighting dirty. The humans had just demonstrated that they understood Meridian technology well enough to counter it. And worse, they had shown a willingness to use that knowledge in ways the collective had never imagined possible. The question now was, what other surprises did these Deathworlders have in store? Shattered illusions. The Meridian Collective Council chamber had never witnessed such chaos. The crystalline beings that made up the governing body of the galaxy's most powerful civilization vibrated with agitation as they processed the latest reports from Earth. Impossible. Council Elder Vixnor's form pulsed with angry red light. No primitive species could possibly counter our quantum communication networks. The humans must have had outside help. Dr. Maya Patel would have laughed if she could have heard that declaration. In her underground laboratory beneath the Himalayas, she was putting the finishing touches on humanity's next surprise for their would-be conquerors. Final simulation complete, she announced to the holographic projections of military leadership. The Meridians wrote all their command and control through quantum-entangled crystals. They believed the technology was unhackable because it was based on fundamental physics. But they never considered that someone might find a way to interfere with the entanglement itself. Admiral Chen's hologram nodded approvingly. And that's exactly what your team has managed to do. Maya allowed herself a small smile. The Meridians think in absolutes. Their technology either works perfectly or fails completely. They never developed the human habit of finding creative solutions to partial failures. Across the solar system, humanity's forces were already implementing the next phase of their strategy. The Meridian reinforcement fleet had arrived, just as expected. Their tactical responses were almost painfully predictable to anyone who had studied their military doctrine. Commander Rodriguez watched from the Hyperion as the massive Meridian ships took up formation. Their numbers were overwhelming, their technology far superior to anything humanity possessed. By any conventional military analysis, Earth's resistance was doomed. But humans had never been very good at accepting conventional wisdom. Ghost squadrons, begin Operation Babel, Rodriguez ordered. Across the solar system, the small human ships activated Maya's new quantum interference devices. The effect was immediate and devastating. Aboard the Eternal Wisdom, High Commander Zixtal watched in horror as his fleet's perfect coordination began to break down. Ships that had operated in flawless synchronization for millennia suddenly couldn't communicate with their nearest neighbors. How? He demanded, his crystalline form flickering with distress. How are they doing this? The answer came in the form of another text message, broadcast on all frequencies. Your quantum entanglement network is impressive, but did you ever consider what happens when the entanglement itself becomes uncertain? Valthor's form pulsed with confusion. High Commander, they're not just interfering with our communications. They're introducing quantum uncertainty into our command and control systems. This should not be possible. But it was possible because the humans had approached the problem from a direction the Meridians had never considered. While the collective had focused on perfecting their quantum technology, humans had studied its limitations, its edge cases, the places where theory met messy reality. The battle that followed would later be known as the quantum sunset. Across the solar system, Meridian ships found themselves operating alone or in small groups, their perfect coordination shattered. And into this chaos came humanity's forces, using tactics that no civilized species would ever consider. Small squadrons of ghost ships darted between the massive Meridian vessels, exploiting blind spots in their sensor coverage. Earth's defense platforms, previously thought primitive by Meridian standards, revealed sophisticated electronic warfare capabilities that turned the collective's own sensors against them. They're not fighting like a proper military force, Valthor observed, his tone a mixture of horror and fascination. Every ship, every unit operates independently, adapting to local conditions without waiting for central command. Zixtal was beginning to understand. The humans hadn't just prepared for this battle. They had spent years studying the Meridians, learning their weaknesses, and developing counters to their strengths. While the collective had assumed their technological superiority made them invulnerable, humanity had been quietly finding ways to turn that very superiority into a weakness. In her laboratory, Maya watched the battle unfold through quantum sensor feeds. The Meridians never developed electronic warfare capabilities because they thought their quantum systems were unhackable. They never had to deal with signal jamming, spoofing, or interference because no species ever dared to try it against them. Admiral Chen's hologram nodded grimly. And now they're learning the hard way that no system is perfect, no advantage absolute, especially when facing an enemy who evolved solving problems by finding creative solutions. The Meridian fleet's formation continued to deteriorate. Without their usual perfect coordination, individual ship commanders were forced to make decisions on their own, something their training and culture had never prepared them for. Some ships retreated, others pressed forward aggressively, and still others simply held position, awaiting orders that couldn't reach them. Aboard the Hyperion, Rodriguez watched the chaos with professional satisfaction. "Send the next message," he ordered. Across the fragmented Meridian network came another transmission. "Your technology is impressive, but it's made you inflexible. You've forgotten that survival sometimes means adapting to imperfect solutions. This is your final warning. Leave Earth space, or we'll show you just how creative Deathworlders can be when we stop playing defense." In the council chamber, the Meridian leaders faced an unprecedented crisis. For the first time in their history, they confronted an enemy who didn't just resist their power, but actively turned it against them. An enemy who seemed to take pride in finding unconventional solutions, who treated warfare not as a formal exchange of force, but as a problem to be solved through ingenuity and adaptation. "We must respond with overwhelming force," Vixnor declared. "Show these primitives the true might of the collective." But Sixtel, watching his mighty fleet flounder in the face of human ingenuity, wasn't so sure. The humans had already demonstrated that they understood Meridian technology well enough to counter it. What other surprises might they have prepared? What other weaknesses might they have discovered in the collective's supposedly perfect systems? For the first time in Meridian history, the outcome of a conflict was uncertain. And uncertainty was something their civilization had forgotten how to handle. The breaking point. The Meridian High Council's emergency session had lasted for what humans would call 3 days. The crystalline beings flickered with competing wavelengths of distress as they faced an unprecedented situation. Failure. "The humans have refused all attempts at communication," Council Elder Vixnor reported, their form pulsing with angry red light. "They respond to our diplomatic overtures with what their language calls memes, some kind of primitive cultural warfare." In her lab beneath the Himalayas, Dr. Maya Patel couldn't suppress a grin as she reviewed the latest transmission sent to the Meridians. A classic, "This is fine" meme showing their fleet in chaos. The psychological impact of humor on the rigidly formal Meridians had proven unexpectedly devastating. But Maya's real work lay spread across the quantum displays surrounding her. The captured Meridian technology had finally yielded its deepest secrets, and what she'd discovered had changed everything. Their entire civilization is built on a fundamental misconception, she explained to the assembled military leadership. They think their quantum technology makes them invincible because it operates on what they believe are immutable laws of physics. But they never understood the true implications of quantum uncertainty. Admiral Chen leaned forward in her command chair aboard the Resilient. "Explain it in tactical terms, Doctor." "They've created a technological house of cards," Maya said, bringing up complex mathematical models. "Their ships, their weapons, their entire infrastructure relies on quantum certainty. But quantum mechanics isn't about certainty. It's about probability. They'd been forcing order onto a system that naturally tends toward chaos." Commander Rodriguez, linked in from the Hyperion, saw the implications immediately. "And we can exploit that inherent chaos." "Precisely," Maya confirmed. "We don't need to match their technology. We just need to remind the universe that uncertainty is its natural state." The plan that followed was quintessentially human, ambitious, adaptable, and just crazy enough to work. While the Meridian fleet regrouped under strict emissions control protocols, humanity prepared their response to what they knew would be coming. A massive, coordinated assault designed to overwhelm Earth's defenses through sheer force. High Commander Zixtel, newly reinforced by the collective's most powerful warships, prepared to deliver the killing blow. "The humans have shown admirable creativity," he admitted to Valthor, "but they cannot stand against the combined might of our civilization." The attack began precisely as Meridian military doctrine demanded, a perfect sphere of advancing warships, their quantum-linked weapons prepared to fire in perfect synchronization. It was the most powerful fleet ever assembled in the galaxy's history. It was exactly what humanity had been waiting for. "Execute Operation Uncertainty," Admiral Chen commanded. Across the solar system, hundreds of devices of Maya's design activated simultaneously. They didn't attack the Meridian ships directly. Instead, they began introducing subtle quantum fluctuations into the space around the fleet. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The Meridian advance continued, their formation perfect, their weapons charging. Then the laws of probability reasserted themselves. Quantum entanglement relies on perfect correlation between particles. Maya's devices didn't break these correlations. They simply reminded the universe that perfect correlation is statistically unlikely. The effect cascaded through the Meridian fleet like a wave of chaos. Aboard the Eternal Wisdom, Zixtal watched in horror as his ship's systems began to desynchronize. Weapons that required quantum-precise timing began firing at random. Navigation systems that depended on quantum positioning lost certainty about their locations. Communication networks dissolved into quantum noise. What are they doing? Valthor's crystalline form flickered in panic. This defies all known laws of physics. No, Zixtal realized with dawning horror. This is physics asserting itself over our assumptions about how it should work. The humans had discovered something the Meridians had forgotten over their millennia of technological dominance. The universe isn't neat and orderly. It's messy, chaotic, and fundamentally uncertain, just like the death world that had spawned humanity. As the Meridian fleet fell into disarray, Earth's forces struck. But instead of a killing blow, they demonstrated something the collective had never expected from a primitive species: restraint. Ghost ships darted between the struggling Meridian vessels, disabling weapons but not destroying ships. Earth's defense platforms established local quantum fields that provided stable spaces where Meridian ships could retreat and regroup. "Send the message," Admiral Chen ordered. Across the quantum static, a clear transmission reached every Meridian ship. "Your technology isn't wrong. It's just incomplete. You forgot that the universe tends toward chaos, and only by accepting and adapting to that chaos can you truly master it. We're offering you a choice. Continue this fight and watch your perfect systems fail, or work with us to understand what you've forgotten." In the High Council chamber, the message sparked the first real debate the collective had experienced in thousands of years. The humans weren't demanding surrender or offering it. They were suggesting collaboration. It was unprecedented, unconventional, and utterly contrary to how the galaxy was supposed to work. Maya watched the quantum readings as the Meridian fleet hung in space, their perfect formations shattered, their assumptions about their place in the universe shaken to their crystalline core. "They're starting to understand," she told Admiral Chen. "Their quantum technology isn't a mistake. It's just one way of approaching the universe. We can show them others." The next 6 hours would determine whether the galaxy would witness the start of a war that could reshape civilization, or the beginning of something unprecedented, a partnership between the most technologically advanced species in known space and the adaptable, creative Deathworlders who had shown them their own limitations. Paradigm shift. The observation deck of the Resilient had been hastily modified to accommodate crystalline beings, a fact that wasn't lost on High Commander Zixtal as he faced Admiral Chen across a table that symbolized more than just a meeting space. It represented the first true dialogue between their civilizations. "Your species," Zixtal began, his crystalline form shifting through thoughtful hues, "has achieved something no other race has managed in the history of the collective. You've forced us to question our fundamental assumptions." Sarah Chen nodded, noting how the Meridian commander's quantum field harmonized with the modified environment. Dr. Maya Patel's insights hadn't just given them a military advantage. They'd provided the basis for true understanding between their species. "That's what Deathworlders do," she replied. "We question everything, because on Earth, unquestioned assumptions get you killed." In the space around Earth, the combined fleets of humanity and the Meridian Collective were already beginning to work together. Human engineers, led by Maya's team, worked alongside Meridian technicians to develop hybrid systems that embraced both quantum certainty and uncertainty. "Your Dr. Patel's theories about quantum probability cascades," Valthor admitted, their form pulsing with scientific curiosity. They don't just explain why our systems failed. They suggest possibilities we never considered. In her lab, Maya was already demonstrating these possibilities to an eager audience of human and Meridian scientists. The quantum displays showed simulations of technologies that merged Meridian precision with human adaptability. The universe exists in a state of dynamic balance, she explained, watching the crystalline beings vibrate with new understanding. Perfect order and pure chaos are both dead ends. Life, real, adaptive, evolving life, exists in the space between. The implications extended far beyond military applications. The Meridian Collective had spent millennia pursuing perfect stability, creating a civilization as rigid and crystalline as their physical forms. Humanity, forged in the chaos of their death world, had never lost their ability to adapt and evolve.